We put the marked bills in his locker tonight.
What if someone sees us near his stuff?
Nobody is back there after 10. He'll be the perfect scapegoat.
We have you on camera stealing. This means immediate termination.
Please, I didn't steal anything.
It's too late for excuses. You're fired. Now get out.
When a grocery store owner went undercover to see how his employees were really treating customers, he never expected to meet an old man quietly working in the shadows, stocking shelves, cleaning spills, and paying for people's groceries out of his own pocket. But what the boss didn't know was that two of his own workers were plotting behind his back, ready to frame that same old man for theft. What happens next will leave you speechless and remind you that sometimes the poorest people are the richest in heart. So before we dive in, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell, because the story you're about to hear will restore your faith in humanity. The automatic doors of Grayson's Market slid open with a soft hiss, and a faint jingle of the bell above the entrance followed. Ethan Grayson adjusted the faded cap that shadowed his eyes and stepped inside the store he'd built from nothing. The smell of fresh produce, baked bread, and cleaning solution blended in the air. Familiar, comforting, and yet strangely distant. It had been years since he'd visited this original location, the one where it all began. 15 years ago, Grayson's Market was just a single corner store struggling to survive. Now, it was a small-town success story. 4 thriving locations across the county, with plans to expand further. But lately, something had been gnawing at Ethan. The profits at this flagship store had dropped despite steady sales. Employee turnover had spiked. The reviews were still glowing on the surface. Friendly service, great local vibe. But Ethan had learned that paper smiles could hide rotten cores. He pulled his flannel tighter, roughened his voice, and nodded as a young clerk waved absently from behind a register. Perfect, no one recognized him. The place looked normal. Cashiers chatting, stock boys rolling carts, the hum of coolers in the background. But something about the energy was off, colder, disconnected. Ethan wandered toward aisle 7, his favorite, back when he ran this place himself. It was where they stocked local honey and homemade jams, part of what made Grayson's unique. Now those shelves looked messy, jars unaligned, labels facing every which way. Small detail, but to him, it screamed neglect. Need help finding something, sir? He turned and saw a young woman with too much makeup and too little patience. Her name tag read Jenna. Just browsing, he said, his tone gravelly. Been a while since I came here. She gave a polite half-smile, the kind reserved for customers who didn't tip or talk too long, then turned away before he could reply. He smirked. She didn't recognize him. Good. As he pretended to compare coffee prices, a movement caught his eye. Down by the back cooler, an elderly man in a faded blue uniform was carefully stacking milk crates. He moved slowly but with methodical precision, each action deliberate, respectful, like the product mattered. His name tag read Arthur. Arthur's thin frame bent slightly under the weight of age, his white hair tucked neatly under his cap. But what struck Ethan wasn't the man's frailty, it was the quiet focus. He worked like someone who still believed every gallon of milk deserved care. Arthur's been here forever. Jenna's voice came from behind Ethan, half laughing as she spoke to another cashier, Kyle. Man's older than the freezers. Should have retired years ago. Kyle chuckled. He's too broke to retire. Lives in that rusty old van out back. You didn't know? Jenna snorted. Figures. He's always slipping cash into the till for those broke customers. Guess he wants to be broke himself. Ethan froze mid-step. Arthur? Giving money to customers? He turned slightly, pretending to browse, but his focus was razor-sharp now. Minutes later, he saw it happen. A young mother with 2 children came to the counter, nervous, counting coins. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm short a few dollars. Kyle sighed loudly. You can't take groceries without paying, lady. Arthur, overhearing, approached quietly from the back. It's all right, Kyle, he said softly, reaching into his wallet. I'll cover it. The woman's eyes widened. Oh, sir, you don't have to. Arthur smiled, the kind that came from kindness, not pity. Everyone's got a rough patch. Feed those little ones. The mother's gratitude was visible, almost painful to watch. She left whispering blessings under her breath. Kyle muttered as he slammed the register drawer shut. Old fool's gonna go broke saving strays. Jenna smirked. He already is. Ethan's jaw tightened. The air felt heavier now, like the walls themselves carried shame. The manager, Lydia, walked by then, brisk, efficient, but clearly exhausted. She didn't seem to notice the exchange. Ethan remembered hiring her 2 years ago. Good worker, too trusting maybe. As the afternoon went on, Ethan saw more. Arthur stayed late after everyone else clocked out, carefully cleaning the produce bins and wiping down the floors no one else touched. When a teenage customer's car declined, Arthur slipped a few bills to the cashier, covering the cost discreetly. When a stock boy spilled juice on the floor, Arthur grabbed a mop before the kid could panic. He never complained, never sought thanks. Yet Ethan caught the smirks from Jenna and Kyle, the whispers. "Bet he's skimming," Kyle muttered. "That's why the drawer's short some nights. Maybe we should mention it to Lydia," Jenna replied with a sly grin. "If the old man gets canned, I might get bumped up." That one line hit Ethan like a slap. He'd built this store on loyalty, honesty, community. And here he was listening to his employees plot against the kindest man in the room. He leaned back against the freezer, staring at Arthur's bent figure, the old man humming quietly as he scrubbed a shelf. That's when Ethan Grayson made a silent vow. He wasn't just going to find out what was happening at his grocery. He was going to set it right. The next day, the morning air hung heavy with rain, the kind that soaked the town in silence. Ethan Grayson parked 2 blocks from Grayson's Market, keeping his disguise simple. Faded jeans, a scuffed leather jacket, ball cap pulled low. He'd barely slept. Every image from yesterday replayed in his head. Arthur's trembling hands counting out crumpled bills for that mother, the sneers from Kyle and Jenna, the indifference in Lydia's tired eyes. Today, he wasn't just observing. He was listening. He slipped inside during the afternoon lull. The store was calm, the lull before the evening rush. Arthur was already there, stocking soup cans with careful precision, his movements slower than before. Ethan noticed and paused to rub his wrist. The pain was catching up. Still, the old man hummed softly under his breath, a hymn Ethan remembered his own father singing decades ago while closing shop. He chose a booth in the small cafe corner of the store, near enough to hear the registers, but far enough to blend in. A newspaper and a lukewarm coffee became his disguise. Jenna leaned against the counter, tapping her long, acrylic nails against the register keys. Kyle leaned beside her, voice low but sharp enough for Ethan's trained ear. "So, check this out," Kyle said, smirking. "I looked it up. Old man Arthur's been here almost 8 years. Can you imagine? 8 years pushing carts and stocking cans. Dude's a fossil." Jenna laughed softly. "Pathetic. I mean, who works that long at a grocery store? And for what? Minimum wage." Kyle shrugged. "Because he's broke. He's always pulling that kind old man act, paying for people's groceries. He probably lives off ramen and cat food himself." Ethan's knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. Jenna lowered her voice. "You heard Lydia talking yesterday. She's been stressing about the drawer coming up short again. You thinking what I'm thinking?" Kyle's grin widened. "Yeah, we both know Arthur slips money into the registers sometimes. But Lydia doesn't know that. She just sees that the totals don't add up." Ethan leaned closer, the blood in his ears roaring. Jenna's eyes lit up with cruel calculation. "So if we help those numbers not add up a little more?" "Exactly," Kyle finished, his tone casual and poisonous. "We make it look like he's been taking money instead of putting it in. Lydia will think she caught him stealing. They'll fire him, and I'll get to bring in my cousin. We split the referral bonus. Easy cash." Ethan's heart dropped. They weren't just gossiping. They were plotting to frame a man whose only crime was compassion. Jenna twirled her pen, smirking, and no more pity party every shift. "I'm sick of customers acting like he's St. Arthur of aisle 7. Kyle chuckled darkly. "Tomorrow, Lydia's doing inventory. Perfect time. She'll be watching the numbers close. We just need to give her a reason to believe they don't add up." They sealed the deal with a quiet fist bump. Ethan swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay seated. Rage and disbelief warred inside him. He'd built this place on family values, on kindness. His father had taught him that a good business wasn't about margins. It was about people. Yet here, in his own store, that legacy was being poisoned by greed. Arthur, oblivious to the venom being brewed, kept working steadily in the back. When a stock boy dropped a box of canned peaches, Arthur knelt immediately to help him. "Don't worry, son," he said kindly. "No harm done." Later that afternoon, a teenager's debit card was declined. The kid's face fell, embarrassed. Before anyone could speak, Arthur quietly stepped forward. "I've got this one," he said softly, sliding a few bills across the counter. Kyle smirked behind the customer's back. "You just keep digging that hole, Grandpa." Ethan forced himself to sit still. Every fiber of him wanted to walk up and shut them down right then. But he needed proof, clear, undeniable proof. That night, when the store closed and Arthur finally clocked out, hours after everyone else, Ethan followed him at a distance. The man's old van wheezed as it rolled through town, turning down a gravel road behind a cluster of storage units. Arthur parked beside a rust-spotted trailer that barely looked livable. A single bulb flickered inside when he opened the door. Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd been paying this man's wages for nearly a decade, and he'd never once noticed where he went home to. The next morning, Ethan met an older customer named Ray Dalton at the town cafe, a regular he remembered seeing chatting with Arthur. "You know Arthur Miles well, don't you?" Ethan asked, voice roughened by guilt. Ray nodded, sipping his coffee. "Known him 6, maybe 7 years. Came here after his wife passed. Cancer. He sold everything to pay for her treatments. Could have filed bankruptcy, but that ain't in his blood. Said a debt's a debt. Why keep working like this?" Ethan asked quietly. Ray smiled sadly. He says the store gives him purpose. That helping people helps him remember her. And between you and me, that man's still paying the hospital a little every month just to square the books. Ethan felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Helping people helps him remember her. And that trailer, Ray sighed. Yeah, that's his home now. Not for long, though. Developers buying the land. 60 days, and he's out. But he hasn't told anyone. Doesn't want pity. Ethan stared out the window at the gray drizzle. Not pity, he thought. Respect. That's what Arthur deserved. By the time Ethan left the cafe, a plan was forming. One that would expose Kyle and Jenna and redeem the man they tried to destroy. When the store closed and Arthur finally clocked out, hours after everyone else, Ethan followed him at a distance. The man's old van wheezed as it rolled through town, turning down a gravel road behind a cluster of storage units. Arthur parked beside a rust-spotted trailer that barely looked livable. A single bulb flickered inside when he opened the door. Ethan's stomach twisted. He'd been paying this man's wages for nearly a decade, and he'd never once noticed where he went home to. The next morning, Ethan met an older customer named Ray Dalton at the town cafe, a regular he remembered seeing chatting with Arthur. "You know Arthur Miles well, don't you?" Ethan asked, voice roughened by guilt. Ray nodded, sipping his coffee. "Known him 6, maybe 7 years. Came here after his wife passed. Cancer. He sold everything to pay for her treatments. Could have filed bankruptcy, but that ain't in his blood. Said a debt's a debt. Why keep working like this?" Ethan asked quietly. Ray smiled sadly. He says the store gives him purpose. That helping people helps him remember her. And between you and me, that man's still paying the hospital a little every month just to square the books. Ethan felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. Helping people helps him remember her. And that trailer, Ray sighed. Yeah, that's his home now. Not for long, though. Developers buying the land. 60 days, and he's out. But he hasn't told anyone. Doesn't want pity. Ethan stared out the window at the gray drizzle. Not pity, he thought. Respect. That's what Arthur deserved. By the time Ethan left the cafe, a plan was forming. One that would expose Kyle and Jenna and redeem the man they tried to destroy. Right on cue, Kyle leaned toward Jenna. "Inventory day," he whispered with a smirk. "You ready?" "Been ready," Jenna replied under her breath. "Time to make sure our St. Arthur gets what's coming." Ethan took a slow sip of coffee, every muscle tight. Around 10 a.m., a young mother entered with a small boy holding her hand. Her coat was patched at the sleeve, her shoes slightly too small. Ethan recognized her, Naomi, the woman Arthur had helped earlier that week. He'd reached out to her the night before through a community group, explained the situation, and asked if she'd help him with one small act that could expose the truth. Naomi played her part perfectly. After shopping modestly, bread, milk, a few essentials, she stepped to Jenna's register, searching her purse in apparent distress. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I thought I had enough. My card must have been declined again. I'm about $15 short." Jenna's lips curled. "We can't just give things away, ma'am. Maybe come back when you've got enough." Naomi's voice broke slightly. "Please, my boy hasn't eaten since yesterday." From a back, Arthur looked up. He'd been listening. He wiped his hands on his apron and shuffled forward. "It's all right, Jenna," he said quietly, reaching into his wallet. "I'll cover it." Naomi shook her head, eyes glistening with real emotion. "Sir, you've already helped me before." Arthur smiled kindly. "Then let's just say I'm investing in good karma." He handed Jenna the bills, who took them with a mockingly sweet smile. "Thanks, Arthur," she said loudly. "You're always so generous." Naomi mouthed a grateful "thank you," gathered her things, and left. As she disappeared through the doors, Kyle leaned toward Jenna, whispering, "Perfect. That's another 20 gone. Lydia's gonna lose it when she counts the drawer." Ethan's chest burned with fury, not just at their cruelty, but at how confident they were in their deceit. An hour later, Lydia emerged from her office, calculator in hand, a frown creasing her brow. "We're short again," she said. "That's nearly $100 missing this week." Kyle stepped forward, all false sincerity. "You know, Lydia, I've noticed some weird stuff around the registers. Maybe we should check the cameras." Lydia sighed. They've been down for months. Corporate never approved replacements. That was news to Ethan. He had approved replacements. Someone, somewhere, had dropped the ball. "Well," Jenna chimed in innocently, "I did see Arthur near the cash drawer after that woman couldn't pay." Lydia froze. "Arthur? Why would he be near the register?" Kyle shrugged. "Who knows? Times are hard. Maybe temptation got the best of him." The words hung in the air like poison. Arthur looked up from the produce display, confusion creasing his lined face. "What's going on?" Lydia approached him hesitantly. "Arthur, I'm sorry, but the drawer came up short again, and you were seen near it." Arthur blinked. "You think I took the money?" "Arthur," Kyle said, voice full of fake sympathy, "we've seen you by the register a lot lately. Always right before the money goes missing." The old man's voice trembled. "I was putting money in, not taking it out." Jenna folded her arms. "On your paycheck?" "Sure." A hush fell over the store. Shoppers slowed, curious. Even the hum of the freezers seemed to fade. Arthur's hands shook slightly as he reached for his cap. "If that's what you think, I'll clear out my locker." "Hold on," came a deep voice from behind them. Ethan rose from his seat. Gone was the slouch, the disguise. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Let's not be too quick to fire a man before we've seen the evidence." Lydia turned, startled. "Sir, who?" Ethan removed his cap, meeting her eyes squarely. "Ethan Grayson, owner." The entire store froze. Jenna's mouth fell open. Kyle's face turned chalk white. "Mr. Grayson?" Lydia stammered. I didn't know you were." "I know," he said simply. That was the point. He looked at Arthur, who stood stunned, dish towel still in hand. "And I've been watching Arthur every day this week." Kyle laughed nervously. "Sir, we were just following procedure." "Enough," Ethan said, his voice low but powerful. He turned toward the mounted TV near the registers and pulled a small remote from his pocket. "See, I had those security cameras replaced 2 days ago. Hidden ones with audio. Thought it was time to see what really goes on when the boss isn't around." Jenna's breath caught. "Wait, what?" The screen flickered on. The store fell completely silent. First came footage from yesterday, Kyle pocketing small bills after shortchanging customers. Then Jenna avoiding transactions that had been paid in full. And finally, the two of them in the break room, whispering, "If we frame Arthur for stealing, Lydia will have to fire him. We split the bonus." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Customers stood, stunned. A few whispered in anger. Lydia's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" Ethan turned to her. This is what's been eating away at the heart of my business. Lydia, not old age, not slow labor. Greed, cruelty. Kyle backed away. This is illegal. You can't. Ethan's eyes burned with righteous fury. You're right, which is why I've already called the police. The doors opened as if on cue. 2 officers stepped in. Jenna broke down in tears. Kyle tried to bolt, but a customer, a big man from the hardware store, stepped in his way. Nah, not today, pal. As the officers cuffed them, Ethan turned to Arthur. The old man looked like he might crumble under the weight of everything that had just happened. Ethan stepped closer, voice softening. Arthur, I owe you an apology. I let this go on too long. You've been the backbone of this place, and I failed to protect you. Arthur shook his head slowly. No apology needed, son. You didn't know, but I should have. Ethan said, emotion tightening his throat. That's on me, and I'll make it right. The officers led Kyle and Jenna out past the silent, watching customers. For the first time in days, Ethan felt the market breathe again. He turned to the stunned crowd. This store was built on kindness and honesty, and that's exactly how we'll move forward starting today. Arthur's eyes shimmered, uncertain, humble, as ever, and Ethan knew the reckoning wasn't just for the guilty. It was for him, too. The morning after the storm, Grayson's Market opened its doors to a different kind of crowd. Word had spread across town about the undercover boss, the betrayal, and the humble man who'd been wrongly accused but proven innocent in front of everyone. For the first time in years, the store was packed not just with shoppers, but with neighbors. The air hummed with quiet excitement, not gossip but pride. Ethan Grayson arrived early, wearing no disguise this time. No cap, no worn jacket, just a simple button-down and a clear purpose. When Arthur Miles walked through the door, heads turned. Customers greeted him like a local hero. Morning, Arthur. Glad you're still with us. God bless you, sir. The old man smiled shyly and used to the attention. His steps were slow, but his spirit seemed lighter, as if a burden had been quietly lifted. Ethan met him halfway across the store. Arthur, he said with a warm smile, mind stepping into the office with me? The chatter in the aisles softened as they disappeared behind the glass door. Everyone knew this conversation would decide the future. Inside, the small office felt almost too quiet. Ethan gestured toward the chair across from him. Please sit. Arthur hesitated. Mr. Grayson, if this is about yesterday, I just want to say thank you for standing up for me. That's more than I ever expected. Ethan leaned forward. Arthur, yesterday was about justice. Today is about something else, gratitude. He reached into a folder on his desk and slid it toward Arthur. You've been with this store for nearly 8 years, right? Arthur nodded slowly. 8 this spring. Ethan smiled. 8 years. That's longer than some people stay married. And in all that time, you've worked harder than anyone I've met. Without complaint, without recognition, and without ever thinking of yourself first. Arthur looked down, uncomfortable with praise. Just doing my job, sir. No, Ethan said softly. You've been doing much more than that. You've been living what this company was supposed to stand for: kindness, dignity, and community. And somewhere along the way, I forgot those things. He tapped the folder again. That's why I'm promoting you, Arthur. Starting today, you're the new community outreach manager for Grayson's Market. Arthur blinked. I don't understand. Ethan chuckled gently. You don't have to stock shelves anymore, Arthur. Your job now is to do what you've already been doing all along, helping people. You'll oversee customer assistance programs, food donations, local partnerships, and you'll be paid like the manager you've always been in spirit. Arthur's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mr. Grayson, I'm just a stock clerk. I never. Ethan raised a hand. You're more than that. You're the heart of this place. And hearts don't retire, they lead. Arthur's weathered hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder. Inside was a formal offer letter, new ID badge, and benefits package. Everything he'd quietly gone without for years. Before he could speak, Ethan placed a second folder in front of him. This one's personal. Arthur frowned, puzzled, and slowly opened it. Inside was a property deed, a small, modest house just a few blocks away. He looked up, disbelief written across his face. Is this? Ethan nodded. It's yours. Paid in full. I found out you were living in that trailer, and that it's being torn down soon. No employee of mine will ever have to live like that again. Call it back pay for all the good you've done. Arthur's lips parted, his voice cracking. Mr. Grayson, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Ethan said, his own voice thick. Because I also spoke to your daughter, Emily. She told me you've been hiding your situation from her for years because you didn't want to be a burden. But she wants you to know something, and she said it word for word. He took a deep breath. Love isn't a burden, Dad. It's a blessing. Arthur covered his mouth, tears spilling freely down his lined cheeks. For the first time, the strong, stoic man let go. Years of exhaustion and quiet struggle breaking loose. Ethan stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. You carried this market on your back, Arthur. It's time we carried you for a while. When they stepped out of the office, the entire staff had gathered. Not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. The customers quieted as Ethan raised his voice. Everyone, he said, this store has always been about community, and no one embodies that better than this man right here. Arthur Miles. Applause filled the aisles, echoing off the freezers and walls. Shoppers, cashiers, delivery drivers. Everyone clapped until Arthur looked down, overwhelmed. Starting today, Ethan continued. Arthur is taking on a new role. And more than that, I'm making a change across all Grayson's market locations. From this day forward, every full-time employee will earn a living wage, health benefits, paid time off, and an emergency assistance fund. So no one here ever has to choose between helping others and paying their bills. Cheers erupted. Even Lydia, the manager, wiped away tears. And to make sure what happened here never happens again, Ethan added, we're starting the Arthur Miles Community Fund to help local families who fall on hard times. Because that's what Arthur would have done. The crowd roared in approval. Naomi, the single mother, stepped forward with her son, holding a small envelope. We started collecting donations for him, she said shyly. It's not much, but Ethan smiled. Keep it. Let's use it as the first contribution to the fund. Arthur looked around at the faces, familiar, grateful, full of warmth. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel proud. As the applause continued, Ethan leaned in and whispered, you built something here that money can't buy, Arthur. You reminded me what this business was meant to be. Arthur smiled through tears. Then I guess we both got our purpose back. Over the weeks that followed, Grayson's market transformed. The atmosphere changed, warmer, more human. Employees greeted customers with genuine smiles, not forced ones. Posters for the Arthur Miles Community Fund appeared at every checkout. Donations poured in. And every morning, when Arthur walked through those glass doors, no longer in a faded uniform, but in a crisp company jacket with his new title stitched on the chest, the same thought crossed his mind. He wasn't just an employee anymore. He was living proof that kindness still matters. And across the aisles, Ethan often watched quietly, a smile tugging at his lips. Because in saving one man's dignity, he'd rediscovered his company's soul. Sometimes the people who have the least give the most. Arthur Miles didn't have much. No fancy house, no big paycheck, no fame. But what he had was a heart big enough to change lives, and a spirit strong enough to remind even a millionaire what true wealth really means. In a world where greed often drowns out compassion, one man's kindness brought an entire community back to life. So the next time you see someone struggling, don't turn away. Be the reason someone still believes that good people exist. Because kindness doesn't cost much, but its impact lasts forever. Speech Balloon, what did this story teach you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe kindness should never go unnoticed, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Until next time, keep believing, keep giving, and keep the light alive. Glowing Star.